fights UFC fans deserve today. First one on the list is going to be heavyweight Jones versus Aspinall in New York City. The location is not super important, but I think this one has a New York feel to it. Unarmed combat, the two most dangerous men in the history of the world. Jones, essentially undefeated. Aspinall, also essentially undefeated. We might as well scrub their records before this to make it even bigger. This is a true 50-50. A lot of younger fans are going to lean Aspinall. A lot of old heads are going to lean Jones. I have no clue who's going to win this. Aspinall is a little bit bigger. He's a little bit faster. Jones has the aura. It's tough to say. Heavyweight fight. This one could go the distance. This one could be over in 60 seconds. It has mass appeal. And besides Conor and Khabib, which that was an insane build-up, the build-up to this one with Jones ducking, Jones maybe retiring, Aspinall waiting on the sidelines, this event is huge. Now, a little bit of a quick caveat. If this one does not happen and Jones does retire, I think Aspinall and Ngannou, now Ngannou's in a different promotion, I think the UFC can make amends. Ngannou wants it. The UFC wants it. If it can't be Jones, Ngannou's interesting, but he doesn't have that same vibe as John Bones Jones. Now, on to light heavyweight. I think the matchup, and these are matchups that have not been made yet. I'm not just going to tell you matchups that have already been scheduled. I think Poatan versus Jamal Hill, whether that is for another UFC title, if Jamal Hill wins his next fight and Alex Pereira wins the title back, that would be a massive rematch. All the smack talk, Jamal Hill showing up to the gym, Jamal Hill, UFC 300, maybe injured, gets knocked out, tells the referees, all of that drama. Poatan retains the title. Jamal Hill and Arte are coming back for the belt. That would be a big matchup. Obviously it's not likely because Jamal Hill would have to get a win or two, and Pereira would have to beat Magomed, which I think is unlikely at this point. But if both lose, that would be an interesting matchup. You know, Alex Pereira's getting old, kind of out of the picture for getting a title shot if you lose to the strong champion 2 times back-to-back. Jamal Hill, that fight is just, an interesting fight on a card, maybe a co-main. That would still be a decent fight, even if it's not for a title. Now, I think at 185, the fight to make is the winner of DDP/Hamzat versus Yuri. I think Yuri coming down from 205. I don't think he's getting a title shot at 205, and if he does, he's probably going to lose. I think what makes more sense for him is to go down to 185, have a size advantage over Hamzat. He'd be taller than DDP, but DDP's a little bit thicker than he is. I would put that card in Vegas. I suspect DDP will win, and that's an interesting matchup. Yuri's kind of crazy style, a little bit more defensive that we've seen in the last matchup, versus DDP, who has a very unorthodox style as well. Imagine Yuri losing 2 title fights at 205, coming down to 185, and imagine he puts away DDP or Hamzat early. I think that is an interesting matchup to make. And, I'm not totally sure that it'll be DDP. It could be Hamzat, but regardless, I think that is an interesting matchup, and I put it in Vegas. Oh, and the Poatan versus Jamal Hill, that one would be in Brazil. It would be in Brazil if Poatan can retain the title. If not, putting it in Brazil you're not going to build a card around a featured fight. Now at 170, I'm going to go. I don't think the most anticipated matchup that we deserve is a title fight. I believe it is Kamaru Usman versus Belal Muhammad. I would put it in Abu Dhabi if it's safe to fight there, which is looking, doubtful. Number 1 contender fight. I think that is the matchup to make. Islam is going to be fighting JDM. I think we need to get Usman versus Belal on that card so we can get the nice face-off. We get the winner of Usman versus Belal. They can run up to JDM or Islam, face-off, all in the same night. Good timetable on that. This fight has beef. These are both very physical wrestlers. We'll probably cancel out, and we'll see a lot of good boxing. If not, we could see one of the best wrestling matchups in the UFC. I suspect this will be a good 5-round fight. Please make it a 5-round fight. And it's dead even. I honestly don't know who would win that. I probably lean Belal, but they got the beef with the podcast. Apparently Usman cried and then wouldn't release it. I think that's an interesting matchup. At 155, I've got two matchups. Now, the first one I'm going to say is Islam versus Ilya in Moscow. I think that would be massive. Absolutely massive. Now, Islam is going to be fighting JDM at 170. Could we still get Islam coming back down for that title shot if Ilya beats Charles? Maybe. It would be a little weird. Islam would gain some muscle and then be even harder cut. The fight would be massive. If Islam wins at 170 and Ilya wins the 155 title, that fight would be massive. Or if Islam just changes his mind and decides he wants to come back to 155 and kick Charles out of that title fight. Or, and this one's a lot more likely, Ilya versus Paddy Pimblett in Madrid, in Spain. Now, I do believe Paddy needs to fight one more time. I think he doesn't want to fight Arman apparently, which I don't love, avoiding the number one contender when you want a title shot. He's probably going to fight a pushover like maybe a Dan Hooker, maybe a Justin Gaethje. I mean, Paddy beats both of those guys. But regardless, if Ilya beats Charles and Paddy gets another win, that fight in Spain, absolutely massive. But obviously, I'd prefer the Ilya versus Islam in Moscow. Now, at 145, I don't think there's a big matchup for the title, but the number one contender fight, Yair Rodriguez versus Diego Lopez. And now, it looks like Yair is going to get a title shot. I don't know why. He's 1-3 in his last 4. He just lost to Volk, and Movsar obviously deserves his title shot. Diego Lopez and Yair both have beef. Both are Mexican. Or I guess Hispanic. Well, they both are Mexican as well. I think this would be a massive fight in Mexico. They've got that Mexico card. Diego Lopez, he needs to fight someone elite. And the names are thin. Ilya just left. Bryce Mitchell went down. So he needs to fight somebody. At least one more fight, but possibly 2 to get back to the title for Diego. Yair, I think if Yair beats Diego, especially in convincing fashion, he deserves the next title shot. I think that's a massive fight. I would put Volk and Movsar on the same card as these guys and have these guys fight before them, 1 or 2 fights before. 5-round, number one contenders fight. The beef is great. Now at 135, and this is going to kind of clear up 125 as well. I really don't want to see Corey Sandhagen fight Merab. He doesn't have the frame. He doesn't have the aura. He's not beating Merab. Pantoja versus Merab is interesting. Pantoja's got that lighter man skill. Both these guys are shorter. And I think it would make for an interesting matchup. I think Merab relies a lot on kind of taking advantage of these tall, skinnier fighters and having better conditioning, being that quick twitch guy. I think Pantoja's faster than him, and Pantoja's going to be carrying around a little bit less muscle. I think Pantoja could make this an interesting fight. I really do believe that. And I think Merab would win, but I'd say it'd be an interesting fight for sure. Now we got a few bonus fights. And I would put that one in Miami. Pantoja versus Merab. I think that's a Miami all-day type card. Now some bonus ones. And these are some ones that I'd like to see. The 7 I listed are must see. Well, really 8. Because I doubled up on a few of them. But anyways. Bonus fights. Number 1 at 170. Gary versus Buckley. They have beef. Buckley is going to need to get 1 or 2 wins to get to the title. Probably 2 because Usman's going to be in his way. And, Ian Gary. If Ian Gary wins this fight, he's got the next title shot, depending on what happens with Usman and Belal. But Belal is probably getting iced out. He's not He's not a UFC favorite. So this is a number one contender fight, sorta. And then my other one is going to be Paddy versus Arman. Kind of touched on this earlier. Paddy needs another win for me to give him the 155 title shot. Him versus Arman, they have beef. Number one contender fight. I think it'd be a 50-50 fight. Probably lean towards Arman. I think it'd be a good fight, though. Good wrestling. We're probably going to see a lot of striking in this. The wrestling will even out. And my final one, and this one is interesting. So this is we talked about the heavyweight options. Aspinall Jones is the biggest fight in fighting him. I mean, it's massive. Absolutely massive. Now, you can't get Ngannou. Dana might say we cannot do it. I will not go back on this. And Ngannou might say, well, we need XYZ. We need top-tier health care. He left because they wasn't about pay. It was something about contracts. I don't know. Aspinall versus Magomed. Now, I think this one is actually interesting. I think Magomed could cause some problems for Aspinall. I think he's faster, and Aspinall's pretty fast. And I know Aspinall is bigger, obviously. I think Magomed is a good enough wrestler to keep this one on the feet. And with that speed, lighter man skill, and with his just crazy speed, I think this could be an interesting and dangerous matchup for Aspinall. Now, I do believe Aspinall would win this, but I would be concerned. I wouldn't. This is not a pushover fight.